Hello, hello, one and all. Tonight, Laura and I are back with segment 2 of the show we did last week, which was titled Revamping Education, especially now that AI has become a big part of it. Some are saying AI has been a part of everything for many, many, many years, and we just weren't aware of the level of it. But now it's a whole different ball game. And Laura will emphasize what she knows about how it's affecting the education system from her experience. If you have not seen the first part of this show, I encourage you to watch it because this will be a continuum of what we started last week. Laura, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Jenny. I really appreciate it.
We got some good feedback on the last show,
I'm
and
glad.
so I was really excited to do this segment because I think we've laid out and made our point about the need for change. Because with AI, our education system was already suffering. And now with AI, I feel it will bring another element of pressure or need for change because we are already seeing that even
Hmm.
though it's new, we're seeing how it's affecting education. But
You're right.
before we start, Laura, I was
Yes.
thinking about something that happened when I was a child that left an indelible mark. And I know there are many cases like this in the world. And I'm going to share it quickly, and then maybe we can build tonight's conversation on this story, in addition to what you wanted to add in terms of your ideas of how we could start revamping.
Right.
You know, as children, from very young, we're told we have to go to school. You have to go to school, and you have to get A's and everything.
Hmm.
I remember when I was a child, they literally made a cap we used to call a dunce cap. And if you didn't get A, B, or C grade, you were called a dunce. And that label stuck on you a lot because, for example, in my case, I was sick most of my childhood. I grew up in the tropics and I had asthma very badly. In fact, back in those days, I remember going to the doctor when I got an attack every morning for 7 days while they gave me an injection with a huge needle. Every day I went, they gave me on the left side of my bottoms, then the right, until I had seven because back then they didn't really have the antibiotic tablets, and that's how you got the
Mm.
treatment. So this affected me because I couldn't go to school as often as many kids because when I got sick, I got sick. And I remember one day telling my mother I was sick, and she didn't believe me and she sent me to school. And someone found me on the side of the road laying on top of my book bag. Seriously, and
Oh
picked
my.
me up and took me to the hospital. So I am sharing this to say that the pressure on young children begins at this tender age of our lives. And not, like we said last week, not everybody's academically um, wired the same way. I hated academics. I'm a creator. You can give me some Play Doh and I'll build a mansion. But I did not like academics. And now I see it's because it was so structured. And I grew up with so much structure that I hate structure. Anytime anyone is coming at me with rules and telling me what to do, I have an unconscious reaction to it. And so I wanted to start tonight's conversation by tabling this because it is a problem. And the other thing I wanted to share, the story I'm talking about, I had a friend who had come from a family where they were all told they had to become a doctor, they had to become a lawyer, or they
Mhm.
had to become some job that society has placed on a pedestal. And this is how the world measures, viewed as a success. Well, this
Correct.
particular person did not want to be a doctor and did not want to be a lawyer, and like me, did not enjoy academics. And the parents kept pressuring him because he wasn't getting the grades that were required to get him into the necessary institution to become one of those. And so,
Right.
guess what? They lived in a a tall building, and one night he jumped out the window and died.
Devastating.
And
Hmm.
so that has always bothered me and it's always lived with me. And when I had my own children, I tried not to do that. But here's the problem: you are measured by this in the entire world.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go out and you meet people, and the conversation centers around where you work, what you do. And I've had to say to a few people, you've asked me to dance with you because this has happened to me in discos when I was a young girl. You haven't asked me to get a history lesson on me. So I've walked away and left them. But having come from the Silicon Valley, after living there for 37 years, it is very prevalent there
Mm.
because this is how people decide if you belong in the in crowd or not. Okay, Laura, I'm going to hand the interview over to you. I mean, the conversation over to you now. But I wanted to table that because I feel like this is part of education. And this would be a good place to start tonight because it is a big problem. And I don't know that I recall anybody talking about this.
Right. Well, I agree with you. I mean, when you are starting on this journey that's supposed to, now it's pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, and it just keeps going on and on. It's a journey, right? And there's so many expectations. And I think this is very stressful for children. And they have a certain level of consciousness too. They just want to know, they want to go to school because they want to make new friends. They want to play. They want to definitely learn because they're certainly curious. But sometimes the education system really kills the curiosity, kills the creativity because it kind of structures them into what they're supposed to do. And now they're finding out that with artificial intelligence and this whole introduction, that many of those things that were required to do, they're now saying, no, this isn't what is needed anymore. We need creativity. We need critical thinking. We need different aspects of what education can offer, right? So it's I think that it should be more like choice, where there is structure, but there's also an element of choice because children do really, when they start, they do thrive in structure, but it's got to be at least enough to let them figure out what they like, what they don't like, where their talents are, right? And that can be done. So I always say that a good school is where structure meets choice, that both of the parent as well as the child, because of course we hope that our parents know their children well because they interact with them, on a daily basis. And since nowadays, I think you go to school from what, 8 to 3? That's a good long, what is it? 7 hour, 8 hour day that you are really away from your family and in an environment that is going to have a significant effect on how you develop, right? So whether you say nature versus nurture situation. So I think schools definitely need to restructure in terms of having that part structure, but also look at the child. That's what we're there for as teachers, right? We study pedagogy, right? Which is the study of the behavioral health of a child. What we are there to decide, or maybe not even decide, but figure out what those talents are, what the hidden talents are, things like that, and kind of zone in on them. So, because if they can really develop their sense of style, and their sense of creativity and their unique sense of talent, they're going to thrive. And now, this is what they're saying with artificial intelligence and the race for superintelligence. Artificial intelligence is going to supersede the human intelligence quotient, your IQ, your intelligence quotient. We're already, I think, at about 120, 140. It's not going to take very long for that intelligence to get to 220. How are we as human beings supposed to interact with something like that? And this is where we are very unique in that we bring very unique talents that cannot be replicated by bots or agents or things like that. You see what I mean? So that's very important.
I agree with you. And I just want to make sure, once again, I feel like I have to clarify, 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 because
Mhm.
there are those who just listen to attack. That what I am saying, and I want to be clear, is that yes, we need an education. Everyone needs an education.
Yes.
But I believe we need to especially revamp the system so that a young person who does not enjoy academics can go to school, like Laura said last week, and the teachers can figure out exactly where that child's strength lies with the help of the child and groom them to do that instead of pressuring them with a curriculum that doesn't bring them joy, that they're not equipped for, and it just adds an element of stress and takes away the joy in learning. I
Yes.
remember I hated school. I just hated the whole. I think I like literature and history and a lot of the subjects that weren't considered, the popular subjects. Of course, you need mathematics and you need the basics of everything. But even my parents had told me I wasn't going to become anything if I didn't step
Mhm.
it up in school. And I've lived to show them I've become a lot of things.
Right.
So I feel that parents really need those parents who pressure children and say, oh, we are doctors and you all have to be doctors too. And if a child is not a doctor or a lawyer, like other people in the
An
family,
architect or an engineer.
an architect or an engineer, then
Mhm.
they shouldn't make that child feel like something is wrong with them. Because I've seen and I know of situations where they'll go, oh, Johnny is a doctor and Susie is a lawyer, and then they hardly even mention the other child who has who has not gone down one of those roads. And it
Mhm.
really creates a complex for the child. And the fact that our society allows this, the society has set it up like this. I know why. But I
Mhm.
cannot say it here because I want to live. When you know, and you cannot unknow what you know. But I have to be very careful what I say because I know I'm already being watched.
Right.
So I think, Laura, that you really need to step up what you are working on because based on what you shared last week, it sounds like it's in alignment with what I am pointing out as one of the biggest flaws in the system.
I know, and the thing is with education comes a lot of, it hasn't changed in a long time. There are certain rules and regulations, unions, there's so many things. There's so many factors. I see a lot of theory out there, theory in the sense that this is what we need to do. Everybody seems to know what needs to be done, but it doesn't get done.
That's
And
exactly.
then, yeah. And when we go back to parents, we don't want to put all the blame on parents either, but parents also need structure as to figure out how they can best direct their children. Because what a 5 or 6 year old starting school now, what is the educational landscape going to be when they get to university? And is even university going to be relevant? There was an interview just recently, and of course everybody follows, Elon Musk, but he was interviewed and said, you have children. What are you telling them to study? What are you telling them to do, especially, considering how everything is changing? And is university going to become irrelevant? And he practically said, yes, it's going to be pretty much irrelevant. But you could go to university if you're interested in something, wanted to learn it. And at the same time, you want the social aspect of university, what that entails. So just imagine we have all these power players now, who really haven't asked us. We didn't vote on it. We didn't vote for artificial intelligence. We didn't vote for what is going to come out of something like that. Nobody asked us. But it is going to affect us and especially our children. And that's what I'm concerned about. Because when I'm teaching, I have students from all different age levels, right? I'm thinking in a year, what's it going to look like? Not even 5 years down the line. And just imagine when I start somebody in second grade, right? Third grade, they're not going to be at upper education for quite a while. If they're saying that our landscape as adults is going to change within a 3 to 5 year span of time for adults, how disconcerting is that going to be for children, right?
Very discouraging.
Right. And for our teens, I mean, teens go, I'm starting high school. What am I going to study? What am I going to do? What are my job prospects? Our purpose comes from they want to talk about universal high income for that, we're going to at least have income for everybody. But our purpose comes by contributing to our community. That's how we get a sense of self-worth, right? So I'm concerned about that. But what should be done is we don't have to cancel out everything, right, that we've been doing. We could use the basic old-fashioned structure, which many people feel comfortable with because there's a little, change is always frightening, right? But we can expand on that, amplify on that, using all the tools and all the advancements that we have moving forward. So I always say, okay, some parents say absolutely no screens. I don't want to have I don't want to see a screen in front of them because that's all they do when they come home. When they're at school, I want them to be with a regular paper and pen, no screen time. Other parents feel a little differently. They feel that the child should be at least versed in the technologies that are there, and especially because what happens is when you're born, there's that survival of the fittest. If you notice, children are a little bit more savvy, tech savvy than we ever were. They almost come into the world with some genetic predisposition towards technology. So I say, okay, paper, pen, very important because cursive writing is super important for some development of the brain. And putting a paper to pen, pen to paper is very important as well. That's why we always have the remarkable pro move that's trying to emulate, that strategy. And then use AI to make it interesting, figure out where you're at, where your talents are, where your predispositions are, and then develop those. So you have a school time where your basic structure, maybe 2 hours a day, and then you go on to do where your talents are. And if you don't know where the talents are, you start discovering those with the child as they move on. Music, pottery making, art, sports, there's so many things that you can really get involved in. And that's what school time should be, because it leaves the child happy and curious and willing to learn. And yes, there is structure because in the world we know, right, Jenny, that sometimes we have to do things in life that we really don't want to do, right? But we're disciplined enough to do that. So sometimes we don't want to cater totally to the child. We do want to give them that structure, that discipline, and that has to be taught in little increments along the way. And that can be done. But at the same time, not kill their creativity, not brainwash them into thinking the way we think. More of a coach, more of a guidance counselor, more of somebody that's schooled in child behavior, right? And can really direct them net, where they need to be and really help their self-esteem. So they're not, thinking like you did when you were a child. I'm not going to become a lawyer. I'm not going to become an architect, engineer, doctor, and I'm not valuable in the society. No, you are more than what you can bank. Unfortunately, our system is all about you're as valuable as what you bank, how much you make. Shouldn't work like that. Because God or whomever you want to aspire to in terms of that super intelligence doesn't make mistakes, right? So it's really up to us to discover that in our kids.
100% agree with all of what you've said. And
Hmm.
don't get me wrong, we have to have structure. Otherwise, the world would be chaotic.
Correct.
What
Yeah.
I'm trying to say is the structure sometimes does not make sense. It's clear that whoever's creating the structure is trying to control us. I feel like we are all little human slaves that are
Hmm.
born into a system that has an
Hmm.
agenda and a plan that benefits them. And if
Hmm.
you look at it, it's blatant. But we are programmed to do what we are told. This is where I have an issue. Because
Right.
from young, I'm questioning some of what I'm told. I'm questioning why, because it isn't making sense to me. And
Right.
questions I've been asking since childhood
Hmm.
throughout my adult life until I decided to go down rabbit holes didn't
Hmm.
make any sense. And now I have the answers. It's infuriating because my fathers, because I have a stepfather and a biological father,
Hmm.
they've left the planet not knowing. And
Right.
many people have.
Right.
So I feel very privileged that I was able to wake up to what is happening so that I could make better choices. But I watch where parents may be awake, but they're limited because the structure and the
Right.
system punishes you if you
Hmm.
don't follow. And a good example is someone I work with who has a child whose grandmother died and since has been having some severe emotional issues, and he doesn't want to go to school, and the school is
Yeah.
constantly at her house putting pressure on her, sending counselors. These
Hmm.
schools, they interrupt people's lives, they don't know the truth. Children tell them one thing, the parents are paying for it. No wonder the world is so chaotic. And
Yeah.
so, Laura, you homeschool. Were
I
you at
did.
liberty to decide what you were teaching your children?
Right. Well, homeschooling gives you that leeway in the sense that I was given the opportunity to decide what curricula I wanted to provide my children. I didn't want them just studying Native American history. I wanted to have them to study global history, geography, poetry, art. This was all included in the curriculum that I designed for my children when I homeschooled them. And I did it, like I said, around time of 2001, I started with homeschooling when it really wasn't the craze or it didn't come into trend like it did after COVID. But the principles still apply in the sense that you just need 2 hours of basic, just the
I guess,
structure, the
sorry, I don't mean to
foundation.
interrupt, but the question I'm asking you is
Mhm.
Did you have a system given to you by the system that you had to
No.
follow, or you just set your own curriculum and you
I did have
decided?
a I did have a charter school kind of following because at the end of the day, it's important also to learn how to I don't want to say it, and it could be derogatory in a way, work the system. You know that there is a system in play. You want to maximize the most out of that system. And you also do want that your children thrive, right? I did know that I wanted my children to proceed in certain professional directives. I knew that early on. One wanted to be a pilot, the other one wanted to be a software engineer. The system was set up where I needed to have at least a charter school that says, okay, all the curricula that was, that is required, they meet all and they are graduating with a certifiable, high school degree, not a GED, but you know, one that is accredited. And then they can also apply for all of the programs that were still in play at that time, like financial aid, the Pell Grants, things like that. If you're not somehow in the system, then you're excluded. So homeschooling without any sort of structure, I don't necessarily think is the most intelligent or not intelligent, the most strategic way, right, of homeschooling. Like I said, you know what the rules are. You fulfill those rules, those guidelines, but then you amplify, right? Like we're saying also with artificial intelligence, you have a structure, but you amplify. You use those tools to make things better, to not stifle curiosity. So I developed that kind of a curriculum, where these were the goal, I had to meet these certain guidelines. They have to take certain tests, no big deal, like what, twice a year. But then I introduced them to philosophy, geography, poetry, art. These aren't even touched upon in schools anymore.
Mhm.
So and travel and if you're learning something, then if you can, you go to actually see something so that mind kind of puts, like we say, a face to the name of what you're studying, right? It becomes a concrete, tangible thing. So, yes, I had that, but I knew how to work and strategize in the system to also put them in a place where they would thrive later on and be able to fulfill what they wanted to do. And one wanted to be a pilot, and the other one wanted to be actually an archaeologist come software engineer. So I was able to do that. But I do that with all of my students now. I pretty much zone in pretty early on, and I start taking propensity type tests to see where their interests lie, what they like to do, how they study. Not everybody's the same. How, Jenny, have you ever heard of that thing where they call the language of love?
Yes, I have.
Right? Everybody has a different language, right? Some people, gifts, right? Some people, it's hearing the words. Some people, it's especially men, what you feed them. You know, Children also have a language, right, of study in terms of how they study better, right? Depends, asking questions, memorization. Not every child is so different. They're so unique, and it's important for that educator to know how to kind of, you know, extricate it out of the child, to figure it out. That's what we're there for, or else what's the point? But they might as well just do it themselves. You know what I mean? A free for all.
But I would imagine a lot of people watching this segment may be
Hmm.
looking at you thinking, well, your kids are privileged because you have the ability to homeschool. But a lot of people, and the people who would probably best enjoy homeschooling, don't have the ability to teach their children. A
Right.
lot of them hardly speak English. A lot of them are people here from other countries who
Hmm.
cannot drive, have no access to transportation,
Hmm.
and they would probably be the best families that would enjoy the benefits of homeschooling.
Hmm.
What would you say to the situation?
and based on my family life, but homeschooling is not the right fit for so many nowadays, especially when there has to be, even just to survive, you need to have two incomes. How do you do that? You have children that you love, you want them to flourish, you want them to thrive, right? But at the same time, you got to go to work, right? You have both parents need to work. What are you going to do? So you enlist them, or that's what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't need to be homeschooling. It can be like a school that you send them to where there's 2 hours of academics and then they're off, through different transport systems to the community services that are around, whether it be sports, arts, music, whatever. The services are already there. Most of the kids or even adults go to these services after work hours or after school hours, right?
Right.
Why does it have to be after school, after work? While the parents are working, the children are going to those what they call quote unquote after school activities. They do it during school, right? And people say, well, my God, it's going to cost me an arm and a leg. I have to pay for those services. No, the school contracts with the services, right? Just as a so that it's not cumbersome to the school either, because you can't have all these big campuses everywhere. And we use Uber, Lyft, Waymo, all those, great artificial intelligence transport ways that are coming about to get the kids during school hours to the activities that they are predisposed, in learning about and in excelling, right? Gymnastics, whatever the case may be. Some people are more athletic, some people are more musical with the coaches at the school that are teachers, right, for the structural part, then they go off and they become supervisors and coaches at those services, right? But then you're finished with work, right? Pick up your kids from school and then you have family time, which is really missing now. And it's so important. Time with our children that is cut short because we are so bogged down by work and other activities and traffic or whatever the case may be. When do you see your children? They come home, they get onto their screens, their phones, whatever, and you don't even have time for dinner. You pick up takeout, DoorDash, whatever. It's crazy.
It's no life. And I remember when I
It's a prison.
first started my show in 2011,
Hmm.
I had a guy on my show. His name
Mm.
was Eason Ramson,
Okay.
or his name is. He's not a was, he is a is.
He is. Okay.
And he was on the first winning San Francisco Super Bowl team. And he got involved with drugs and he was beaten up and left to die. There's an interview. He was on my show, and the interview's on the internet. But he has reformed his life. And now
Mm.
he works with young people in the YMCA. And I had some of those kids on my show because I
Mm.
wanted to find out how they could afford drugs. They had drug habits. Turns
Oh.
out they're the ones that commit petty crimes. And guess what?
Mm.
They are the children that were unsupervised. A
Yeah.
lot of them were between when school let out and when their parents got out of work. And it
Yeah.
just broke my heart. So much so that I had many sleepless nights and came up with the idea that I'm starting a foundation and I'm calling it Live Wires. And I'm
Mm.
going to take care of all these kids. And I'm
Oh,
going to teach them to cook and sew and knit, write poetry, all my gifts I would share with them. And then I would get fathers to help the boys with woodwork, soccer, whatever. I mean, I had this big idea and I was ready to do it.
okay.
And then I met with the mayor of
Hmm.
Mountain View in the Silicon Valley where I lived. And I told him, I am
Hmm.
starting this foundation. I'm
Uh-huh.
calling it Live Wires. And I'm
Hmm.
going to take care of all the kids whose parents are working and they have no supervision. And he looks at me and he goes, Jenny,
Mm.
I don't think you can do a one-man philanthropy. I don't think you can do this by yourself. So then
Right.
he encouraged me to join the Police Athletic League, which is a foundation that the
Mm-hmm.
police has to help reform young people who've had
Mm,
these issues. And that's kind of how I ended up doing this show, to tell you the truth. But
mm,
I just think that parents who are like retired fathers and mothers in an ideal world could dedicate some of their time to start the life wires, to bring my dream to life. And it
yeah.
would help us to have a better world.
Mm-hmm.
But as a journalist, and a very curious one,
Mm-hmm.
who finds herself down lots of rabbit holes, I am discovering that those who run the world like it like this. So all I am is a little squeaky voice in the crowd, yelling and screaming, I see what is wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how to fix it.
Right. Sometimes when we come up with ideas or we have, anything that we really want to do that seems almost overwhelming, right? Monumental. Um, I always say, you go 150 miles per hour on the freeway, but you have to go 5 miles. You have to go slowly first. And not everything becomes what you want it to be. It doesn't culminate into anything. But you know what? Doing nothing is also not constructive,
Exactly.
right? So I'm not saying that my ideas are going to generate into something great, but I know that if at least with one student or another student or just my pool of students, at least I'm paying forward my ideas, my experience to make somebody's life better. Of course, we want it to be achievable for all levels, for all children on all levels of the economic spectrum, right? What really gets me is that unfortunately, there are schools that do go in line with what I'm saying in some way, right? Not exactly, but they're super expensive. And again, it talks about the elite.
Mhm.
So my value is in the sense that I have pinpointed where this can be achievable by people from all different walks of life
Mhm.
economically, right? And if we really want to change theory into action, because you feel, oh, this is what we should be doing, that there have to be those, you can't be on an island. You have to have the movers and the shakers behind you, supporting that movement. But sometimes I feel that we get lost in the theory and really nothing ever changes or gets done unless you are part of that elite group of a few, and that gap is just widening more and more. And our children are going to suffer those consequences, right? So
Not they are going to, they are suffering.
they are, yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Even more so. I'm just saying that
Mhm.
that gap is becoming more and more. It's just widening, right? Middle class is really just going by the wayside. There's only the ultra high elite, right? And they look a certain way, they act a certain way, they talk a certain way, and then there are the rest of us. I do think of all of that, but it can be so overwhelming that it could be depressing, right? So my point is, okay, I can't change maybe the whole world, but I can at least put the seed out there, right? One thing. Two, like you say, when you see something is wrong, if you can state it, you should, right? If you can't even say it, you should think that it is wrong and do something about it, right? So this is important. So whenever I have a student or I've made a difference in a child's life, I feel encouraged that I can still do it for more, right? And hopefully, because they have been in my classroom, that they will be inspired to be something, do something more, right? So that's how I think it, or else it can be very overwhelming and you get you stop in your tracks. You do
Well, I
nothing.
think that's what we have to avoid, overwhelm, because
Yeah.
nothing gets done because everyone feels overwhelmed. What I've discovered, and this is my humble opinion, and I'm entitled to it,
Right.
those who have the money and who can make a difference are not concerned with issues like this.
No.
They, their, and theirs are living comfortably and living big. And I really believe in their minds,
Mhm.
they believe those children that we are speaking about right now don't deserve any more than what they have. So, although they have the resources and the time,
Mhm.
these people are insignificant to them. But
Right.
I really believe if you take a stone, if you see a situation, it's like throwing a stone in still water. The
Mhm.
tiniest pebble will
Right.
create a ripple. And
Correct.
if you enough people throw pebbles, it
Mhm.
will make a difference. I have used this illustration in several other segments that I have produced, but I'd like to share it again in case you haven't seen one of those segments.
Mhm.
A young boy and his father were on the beach. A huge wave came and threw tons of jellyfish on the beach. And the
Mm.
little boy panicked and started crying. He didn't
Mm.
want them to die. So he woke his father up and he goes, Daddy, look, look, the wave knocked all the fish on the beach. We have to throw them back or they will
Mm.
die. And his father said, Are you kidding? Look how many fish are on the beach. And you and I can't throw them all back. He ignored his father and he started throwing the fish back. And pretty soon, everyone
Mm.
on the beach saw what he was doing and they started helping. The father got up and started helping, and they managed to save almost all the fish. And to
Right.
me, this is the attitude we have to have, not only with education, with everything that we see in our lives that need changing.
Right.
I don't have kids that need education, but that doesn't mean I can't worry and I shouldn't help those who do.
Correct.
Because
Yeah.
this is why we're on this planet to
Mhm.
help each other, to become the best versions of ourselves, and to wake up to the mission that we are here for.
Mhm.
Mine, with absolute certainty, is a humanitarian. I care so much about people that sometimes I find myself laying awake at night thinking about ways to help people I know who need help.
Right.
Oh, Laura, I think we
Mhm.
can't let the frustration get in our way. I think
No.
you were already off to a good start with the kids that you are teaching. And hopefully, like a few people called me up and said, Oh, boy, I wish she was teaching my kids, when they were that age. And that was only one segment. So
Right.
if we could continue to do this and put ideas out there, but
Mm.
not only put ideas, act on them,
Correct.
and then hopefully when other parents and other communities see how the children you are helping are benefiting from this, it will be the fish in the sea situation.
Right.
Or because at the end of the day, every parent or most parents, because some parents don't care, but most parents want the best for their children, and they will
Yes, and
implement
they
anything that's working and helping them.
right, and they really need parents need tools too. They need the advice, the counsel, everything. They also need to hear different perspectives, right? I mean, when you're sick, right, and there's a malady on your body, you go to a doctor, you go to a specialist, and you hope that that doctor advocates for you. Teacher works in the same way when it comes to a child, right? You get this, pure, beautiful place to start. And then are we brainwashing them? Are we structuring them into not thinking for themselves? It's our duty as professionals, right, who have maybe learned in our experience and in our studies how to approach, these children and not taint them to the fact that we give them baggage, we brainwash them, we think we know best. We let them learn about themselves and others, right? in a good environment that can really, it's not going to be perfect. Nothing is perfect. We're not looking for perfection. We're just looking to change what should have been changed quite a while ago, especially, and then now it begs for it because before you'd say, okay, you don't study, you don't get the grades, you don't get the good jobs, you don't, you're not going to feed yourself, things like that. It's not going to be that way any longer, right? It's just going to be a different world. And how are humans and humanity going to fit into that? And this is what needs to be addressed. And that's what keeps me up at night, How can we reach the most of the children, not based on their economics? How can we get everybody on board, the progressive minds, and really embrace where we're going towards and let them, let children really thrive, right? Let teens thrive. I'm worried about the teenagers too, Jenny, They're
That's going
going
to be
into,
our next segment because we've
okay.
already done an hour.
Yeah,
And you
okay.
yourself pointed out if the videos are too long, people
I
leave.
know, I know, I
So I
know.
don't want to make the videos too long, but we will keep coming back until we've covered it
Yeah.
all. Um,
Well, I thank you for the platform and I thank you for engaging in the conversation. That's also super important, just get the word out, try to keep talking about it and see what comes into play, right?
and I have a suggestion. I do not do live shows. I don't like doing them because
Right.
I like to be able to edit out anything that is said
Mm,
that could potentially get me and my guests in trouble.
right.
And so I do not do live shows, but I have a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
Please write to Laura and I. You could put your questions in the comments. If you have a comment, you don't agree with something we've said, you have a different opinion, please write it in the comments or you can email me. And my email address is in the bottom of every video. My contact information is. And then we can talk about that on the next segment.
Oh, that would be great. Yes. Any questions that parents have moving forward, things like that, right? So I'm looking for more, let's say, power players in this education revamp. It's very much needed, and it can't just be theory. I'm done with the theory. We
Okay,
need
so
the action.
next week we will speak some more about that because we've already gone over an hour.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to next week. I'm looking forward to your feedback from this segment. Um, like I say, I don't do this for fame. I don't really care about fame. I'm wide awake and aware of what is going on the planet. So fame doesn't do it, it's not my thing. I
Right.
want to make a difference. And
Yeah.
thank you for continuing to follow me. I'm looking forward to another segment next week with Laura, but most of all, hearing from you because we have a whole new generation brewing, and we all can play a part in making them a healthier generation than we have right now.
Yeah.
And I will see you next week with Laura, and I'll be bringing you more fascinating people. Thank you for watching my show, and we will see you soon with another segment. Thank you.